Hello. Today, I wanted to talk about some archaeological finds and evidence that back up different biblical stories. Today, I wanted to focus on the crossing of the Red Sea. Now, if you don't know what the crossing of the Red Sea is, it's a story from the book of Exodus in the Bible. And basically, a shortened version of what happens in this story is there's a man named Moses who wants to get his people out of Egypt because they are being held captive there as slaves by the oppressive Pharaoh at the time. Now, after sending down 10 plagues on the Egyptians, the Pharaoh finally agrees to let Moses and his people go. But after Moses and his people leave, the Pharaoh sends a bunch of chariots and troops after Moses to bring them back to Egypt. While Moses and his people are fleeing, they come to the Red Sea and they can't cross it. But God parted the waters of the Red Sea so that Moses and his people could cross safely. Now, I know that this story sounds insane. It seems impossible that something like this could happen, but there's evidence to back up this story. There is a dry riverbed called a wadi, which leads into a beach of the Red Sea. And on this beach, a man named Dr. Ken Hovind talks about a pillar that they found on this beach. And on the pillar, it says, this pillar was erected by King Solomon to commemorate the crossing of the Red Sea. Then they found that a little bit south of this pillar, there's a very deep trench of the Red Sea that's about 5,000 feet deep. But in the middle of this trench, there's a natural land bridge across it where the water's about 900 feet deep. And in the Bible, it says that Moses and his people crossed on dry land with walls of 900-foot water beside them. So then, after Moses and his people crossed, the Egyptians tried to come after Moses and them to bring them back to Egypt. But God sent down a wall of fire at the end to block their escape and drown them in the Red Sea. A man named Ron Wyatt, who is a biblical archaeologist and made a documentary about the crossing of the Red Sea, dove down under the water at this natural land bridge and found a bunch of chariot wheels, broken chariots, and bones under the water here. And these chariots matched the exact style and design that the Egyptians would have had back in this time. On the other side, where the Moses and his people would have crossed to, a man named John Vallée found that the sand on the other side was completely melted into glass, which is evidence that God actually did send down a wall of fire to block the Egyptians' escape. It takes at least 3,000 degrees of heat to melt sand down into glass. Today, many people think that the Bible is full of a bunch of just fairy tales instead of historical events. But with evidence like this, we can conclude that these are actually historical events that happened and not just stories.